Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. I am back at last after what is, I think, now a month out from making videos in which a lot has happened. Liverpool pushed to within just 2 wins of securing the Premier League title. They unfortunately got knocked out of the Champions League by Atletico Madrid, and then it happened. All the football has stopped, which has made it a little bit difficult for me to make some videos. And I wanted to start this one off by just asking you guys what you want to see. I mean, there is some stuff that I feel like I could put out, but I wanted to know what it was you wanted to see, because at the end of the day, I make the videos for you, not for me. And it would be utterly pointless if I was just making the kind of stuff that you guys didn't want to watch. So the kind of stuff I can put out, obviously I can continue with what I'm going to move on to a bit later on in this video, which is general news updates whenever anything happens with regards to what's going on at Liverpool and the wider footballing world, especially when it comes to the plans to continue the season at some point and exactly how that is going to pan out. I can just do some regular or semi-regular, it depends what happens, news updates on what's going on there. There are other things that I can do. I thought about maybe doing a FIFA 20 career mode, you know, taking Liverpool through the season just gone, something like that, if that's what you guys would be interested in, or potentially analysis of classic matches as well, going back and looking at the famous European Cup wins and stuff like that, or some of those classic FA Cup finals that Liverpool played in the 70s and the 80s, doing a little bit of analysis, maybe not like the post-match reaction videos, because of course they'll be slightly less emotionally charged. I'm not going to be coming into them straight off the back of the full-time whistle with all the feelings that are associated with that. It'll be slightly more, I don't want to say forensic, because at the end of the day, I'm not a football analyst, I'm a fan, I'm just like one of you guys, but sort of going a bit more in depth into exactly how Liverpool won those games and what it was that made all those Liverpool teams of old, and the more recent ones as well, so absolutely brilliant. So there's plenty of stuff I could do. News updates, FIFA videos, analysis of classic matches, or something different. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys want to see, or, you know, hit me up on Twitter at LFC Focus TV. I'll put a link to that down in the description below, and I'll put the out on the screen or something like that if you guys want to use that method to tell me what you want to see. But as I said, the videos are for you, so it entirely depends on what you want to see on this channel. And if you do want to see stuff going forward, then I will start to upload a little bit more regularly while we all are stuck in this absolute hell that is coronavirus quarantine. But back to what is actually going on at the moment. And speaking of coronavirus, it has of course wreaked havoc, not just in the world in general, but I'm going to focus on the footballing world because that's what the channel is all about. And of course it has wreaked havoc with Liverpool's attempts to win the Premier League title. And the question on the lips of every Liverpool fan at the moment is, you know, at some level, are we going to win the league? And if so, how? And I think what's really, really encouraging is the assurance has kind of been made that whatever happens, Liverpool are going to win the league in some capacity. It's looking more and more unlikely by the day that the Premier League is going to be voided, despite the fact you see a lot of articles about it. And I think part of the reason we see those articles is because Liverpool fans have always been ripe for clickbait on platforms like Twitter and stuff like that. When news outlets are trying to get people to just click through onto their articles, they tend to talk about Liverpool because Liverpool fans are obsessed. They always read everything about our club, and other people are kind of not obsessed with us in a way, but always want to know what's going on with Liverpool. And of course, in the current climate where we're desperate to find out whether or not we're going to get this Premier League title, slapping out an article that says Premier League void becomes more likely is a very easy way to panic Liverpool fans and get them to click through and read your article and look at all the ads and give you a load of money. But I think it is very unlikely that the league's going to get voided, and there's multiple reasons for that. One of them being most teams in the Premier League don't really want to see it happen, and across Europe as well, all of the top 5 leagues have made some sort of commitment to trying to finish the season. The Premier League and the Liga have also all suggested that they'd be willing to go beyond the summer as well, so encroaching into the period that was initially set aside for the next season. That as well is looking like it's going to be truncated in some capacity. It's certainly not going to be to the point where we can go back to normal as it was in August, I think, at this rate. So there's no fear that, you know, we'd run out of time to complete it, despite what people like Harry Kane are saying, where they're saying if it doesn't get finished beyond June, then we should just void the season and completely forget about it. I think that's an idiotic idea, and I think Harry Kane is also not really, despite being a big figure in the Premier League, not really the figure of authority on this matter, because he doesn't really, let's be honest, understand all the admin and the legal side of it and the financial side of it as well. And that's what it's really boiling down to. Unfortunately, our opinions as fans and what we want to see doesn't really have a huge bearing on what happens. It really comes down to contracts and who loses money versus who could potentially gain money out of it. And as it stands, the way for the least amount of people to lose the least amount of money is to finish the season at some point, regardless of in what capacity that happens. It's very interesting to see how the Premier League also has to kind of liaise with the EFL on this as well. The three leagues below us have made an unequivocal commitment to not voiding the season. They've said that cannot happen under any circumstances because potentially up to, I think they said 45 clubs could go bust as a result if they simply void the season without any effort whatsoever to try and finish it. So the Premier League has to kind of bring itself in line with them at some point. There's the argument that teams like Leeds and West Brom, who are currently in automatic promotion positions to the Premier League, if they get denied that promotion, it's not just losses from this season, but going forward as well. You know, the potential of money that they could have gained from getting into the Premier League that they might now miss out on is absolutely massive. So the EFL has said there's no way they're voiding it, and as a result, the Premier League is almost locked in to following their lead as well, which is kind of an interesting power dynamic when you think about it. You feel like it should be more top down. The Premier League makes a decision and everyone else falls in line with them. But the EFL is, at the end of the day, a slightly larger organisation. There's more clubs there, and there's more at stake, really. The Premier League clubs, while they are all in a fair amount of jeopardy, I think it's fair to say, financially. Like I said, there are teams in the EFL that could go bust tomorrow as it stands. So they are not voiding any of the seasons. And as a result, the Premier League doesn't really have that option either. So thoughts have instead turned to exactly how we finish the season. And like I said, Liverpool are almost definitely going to win the Premier League title as a result. Even if no games are played, it's kind of been said, you know, I think it was the head of UEFA said today that he couldn't see a scenario where Liverpool weren't crowned Premier League champions. And even if the season was stopped and no more games were played, it would still be logical and fair to give them the trophy. You know, we've seen something slightly similar in Belgium where they have cancelled their league, but the reason they've cancelled the league is because there's one game left. They haven't voided it. They've essentially declared the current standings as being the final standings as well. It's slightly different over there because Club Brugge have been declared champions and they had a 15-point lead at the top of the table, which makes things, you know, not quite the same as what they are here, where Liverpool didn't have it mathematically guaranteed, but 25 points clear with just 9 games to play and Man City only having 1 game in hand. I think it's fairly obvious that Liverpool were going to win the Premier League title, and absolutely no one, least of all Manchester City, were going to stand in their way and are going to stand in our way. They've already kind of had players coming out and saying if the season stops now, it's only fair that Liverpool get the title. So anyone who's worrying that we're not going to get 19 Premier League titles, I'd calm down a little bit. It's almost definitely going to happen. The issue is, as I said, how it happens. And there's a chance that no games are played and Liverpool just get it. And there's a big asterisk next to it, which would be slightly disappointing, saying that we never quite completed the season. It was curtailed for coronavirus and we were kind of given the title by default, essentially. What's looking the most likely option at the moment is this quarantine camp idea that's kind of been thrown around over the last couple of weeks or so, which is essentially the idea that you do it like a World Cup where players are separate from the outside world, separate from their families. They all kind of train in camps. Pardon me, these camps would be even heavier quarantine than they would have been at the World Cup. It's only players and essential coaching staff and people like physios and medics and stuff like that who would be available to the clubs in this time. They'd all be housed in hotels where they'd be cut off from the outside world. They'd all play games within training facilities. I think it's been touted as either being in London or in the Midlands. I think the Midlands kind of makes sense because you've got a lot of football facilities there, but it's not quite as tightly cramped as London. It would make it a little bit easier to quarantine the players and cut them off from essentially from the rest of society as well. Obviously, this isn't ideal because it's not what we wanted to see. It's not how we wanted Liverpool to win the league. But at the end of the day, it would mean all the games get completed. It would mean you'd have, you know, probably the most fair way we can set some final standings with every team having played 38 games at this stage. At the moment, it's looking like that would probably be implemented sometime around June or July. We've obviously got to wait a little bit because while we are currently in this lockdown and heading towards what everyone believes is going to be the peak of the disease over the next couple of weeks or so, it doesn't make any sense to start the Premier League anytime soon. And there's obviously the pressure on infrastructure that you've got to consider. What testing will have to be more widespread to make sure that no infection gets into the camp. We'd also need less pressure on hospitals and stuff like that. So if anyone does get the infection, or simply if players get injured and stuff like that, they will have access to facilities to help them get better without them putting a kind of unnecessary strain on an NHS that is, you know, suffering at the moment because of the strain that's being put on it by the coronavirus. So we're going to have to wait until things die down a little bit, but certainly I don't think we'll be waiting until, you know, the lockdown's lifted, the quarantine's over and everything's absolutely fine, because the Premier League want to get this done sooner or later. The government, interestingly, want to get it done sooner rather than later, because they want this as kind of a sign that things are getting back to normal and also giving people something to do, something to enjoy. They want the Premier League back on television, and that's another side of it as well. It would be a TV mega event. Every single game would be televised. You'd probably see, I think they're saying something like a handful of games every single day. So all teams will be playing, you know, every 3 or 4 days or so to try and get this done as quickly as possible, which means the tournament which is essentially what it is. It would feel like a tournament, but it is, of course, the end of the Premier League, would take place over about 6 months. Presumably, at the moment, the kind of provisional date that's been set, although all of that could change because we don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of months or so. But as it stands, it looks like it's going to start at the start of June and finish some way midway through July. We may also see a couple of rule changes as well. It's been touted that obviously VAR is going to be binned off because we don't have the facilities for it. When you think about things like social distancing being implemented wherever necessary, the idea of having a load of lads, you know, cooped up inside a tiny van watching screens, you know, feels a little bit silly. And also the infrastructure to put that in place would be very difficult, given that they're not going to be playing in the stadiums they usually play in. They are going to be playing on training fields. The kind of stuff you'd see at St George's Park, the place where England train, although it's looking like that's not going to be a viable venue for it. But that kind of area where it's just a series of football pitches, there would of course be broadcasting teams there so that we can see the action all around the world, but nowhere near to the kind of level of efficiency and broad depth that would allow them to implement VAR. Another rule change that's being considered is to up the amount of substitutions, so teams can make 5 substitutions in a game rather than 3, because fitness is, of course, a massive concern now. With the time that players are going to have to take off, the fact that they can't train in the same way they normally would, of course, most of them, especially at the elite level, especially when you think about Liverpool, have got gyms at home, they've got facilities at home, and we've already seen them doing like those mass Zoom calls where they all have one big yoga class together as a team, which is obviously a very nice thing to see as well, because it must be difficult for the players when they're all isolated from one another, given that aside from that they spend every single day together in training. But it is certainly a concern that players will come back and not quite have the fitness to play to the level that they usually do. We probably won't see the same standard of football that we would have done had the season carried on as normal. But of course, that was never going to happen. So injuries are a little bit of a risk. And as a result, there's been this idea that maybe 5 substitutions would make more sense than 3, because you could rotate a little bit more. No player's going to be complete more than like 3 90 minutes in a row as a result, aside from maybe goalkeepers and Virgil van Dijk, because we never need to sub him off because the guy barely ever breaks into a sprint. But it's going to be very, very interesting. I think it's fair to say that's maybe one word you can give to it, because it's completely unprecedented what we're going to see now, and as a result, it's not going to happen the way we wanted it to. And my personal opinion is, on any other occasion, I almost wouldn't want to see Liverpool win the league behind closed doors, because it doesn't feel right. And if I had my way, I'd rather we just waited until everything was back to normal. I'm perfectly happy to wait another couple of months, or couple of, you know, or maybe even half a year for the Premier League to return, if it meant it returned in packed out stadiums with all the fans watching it, and it returned as it should return. But unfortunately, given the fact that the money men want this done as soon as possible, the government is pushing to get it done as soon as possible. And I feel like once, you know, we can return fans into stadiums, that's when they're going to want to get the next season underway instead. It's very unlikely that that is going to be the case, and it is almost certain now that the league is going to get completed in some capacity, but it will get completed behind closed doors. And on any other occasion, I wouldn't be too happy about that, and I wouldn't want it to go ahead. But when it's your first Premier League title in 30 years, you kind of just want to, you know, rip the Band-Aid off, as the Americans would say, and get it over and done with. And I think, to be fair, the way the season has panned out, with the unstoppable procession, the march that Liverpool have been on, it's almost felt like every single game has been the title party. Every single full-time whistle so far this season, apart from the Watford game and maybe the game at Old Trafford, has come with that explosion of relief, that feeling that we are finally getting there. So obviously we've been robbed of the biggest moment of all, the ultimate let-off that would have been the final whistle and the moment that Liverpool won the league. Whoever that was against, wherever it was, inside whatever stadium and wherever you would have been at the time, it would have felt so much more special if you could enjoy it around fans, or if you're incredibly lucky, could even enjoy it in the stadium. So it's not going to be the same, but I think we just want to get it over and done with. And if this is the only way to do it, then I'll take it. I'll take a Premier League title under pretty much any circumstances at the moment. And I think the one stipulation that I would put in is when football does return, please do it when it's normal. Do it when it returns properly, when it can feel triumphant, when it can feel like we are finally, at last, back to normal and the sport we all know and love has returned in all its glory, as it should do, with fans packing out the stadiums, with everyone who isn't in the stadium watching it with friends, watching it in pubs and bars and stuff like that, and enjoying football as it should be. But until then, let's just get this over and done with, and let's finally get that 19th Premier League title. So yeah, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. I hope you're happy to see me back, and I'm very interested to see what you guys want to see from the channel in the near future. Apart from that, don't forget to hit the like button down below as well if you enjoyed the video. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out in the past on the channel. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back soon, hopefully, with some more news or whatever it is you guys are interested in. Until then, bye for now.